Hey, how's it going? It's Toast back with part three of the urban legend Iceberg. This is going to cover tiers three and maybe four, depending if I can export it. Now I have the same issue as last time. Anyway, so yeah, we're just going to get right into it because if you're already here, you've probably already seen the first two parts. You probably already know how an iceberg works at this point. So we're just going to roll into it. Also, I'm just going to kind of skip over some of like less interesting ones or not really go that much in deep with, that much in depth with them, because I do think a good part of icebergs is, you want to learn new stuff. You want to learn interesting things, not hear the same old repeated thing over and over again. So starting off tier three, we have the creepypasta meme Zalgo. Zalgo is described almost as a Lovecraftian being that lurks in the internet and corrupts content. Mostly just comics, at least according to the creator. The original design was just comics, art, and me, but it can go for text as well, and according to some interpretations, even video, and reach out and possess people. What it'll do is it'll infect and twist the art to kind of spread Zalgo's hive mind, and there's some kind of cult involved because some people also say Zalgo is a world-ending being, but I'm gonna just go off of the original creator's canon, which is it just corrupts content for the sake of corrupting content. Laughing Jack is another, albeit not as good, creepypasta, and often called a Jeff the Killer ripoff. His story goes, Jack was a sentient jack-in-the-box back in like the 1800s, whose last owner abandoned him due to school, and that guy would eventually grow up to be a serial killer, and Jack started to mimic his last owner and is now a Tumblr sexy man serial killer. It's not good. He's a little cringe, not gonna lie to you. Devil's Chair is a pretty neat legend and one that's almost exclusive to the United States. See, back in the 1800s, it was pretty common in cemeteries to have chairs carved out of stone for people that were visiting the cemetery, and these were known as mourning chairs. And they were a normal thing. Hell, I mean, you can look, there are some people that have their tombstones made into, their tombstones were designed to be chairs for these mourners. And over time, this tradition kind of fell out of fashion, and because of this, local legends started to form around these chairs and the local cemeteries. And this is one of those things that is very subjective to where you are and who you ask about them. Now, from what I was able to find online, most of the legends relate to these mourning chairs goes along the lines of you have to sit in the chair either just at midnight or on a specific night like Halloween or New Year's Eve. And depending on the legend, you may get away with just some bad luck. You could be dragged to hell. According to the Devil's Chair of Cassadaga, Florida, if you leave a beer can on the chair, it'll be empty by morning. And they're not all bad things. For example, the throne of Attila, which is in Italy, is considered a devil's chair. And it's said if a young woman sits in it, she'll be married within a year. So, ladies, if you're ready to settle down and willing to try anything, that's an option. Other stories will say, it'll bring you good luck or it'll bring you some kind of fortune. It's, the risk reward to it is there. It's just a matter of, are you willing to do whatever evil the chair is going to do to you if you sit. Kujisaka Onna, or the slit-faced woman, is a pretty well-known Japanese legend. Her legend goes that she's a spirit of a vengeful and beautiful woman who roams the street at night wearing a mask and carrying a knife. And if encountered, she'll ask you if she's pretty. If you say yes, she'll take off her mask, revealing that she has cuts that go from the edge of her lips all the way to her ears, and ask if you still think that she's still pretty. If you say no, she'll still kill you. If you say yes, she'll give you the same scars. The only known ways to survive her attacking you is if you offer her money, hard candy, or you say she's average. So when in doubt, call the ghost mid and you'll be okay. I also like that someone made this neat little line graph on how to deal with her, and no matter what, you're still gonna die. Mkwekwe is our next entry, and our first to come from Africa. She's a schoolyard legend from Nigeria, and she's supposedly the spirit of a woman in red heels that haunts boarding schools. Specifically, she haunts the halls of the dorms at night, and she will attack children that either come to school too early or leave too late. There's a few different versions of her story. One goes that she was fired after hitting a student and swore revenge on the school kid just before dying in a car crash, and she now haunts schools, keeping true to her curse. Another version is she was known to beat students, but the school did nothing about it, so the students kind of took it into their own hands, and they accidentally beat her to death. Because of this, her ghost then started to hunt them down one by one, And then once all the students involved in her death had disappeared, the school shut down and all the other kids were sent to different boarding schools and, spreading the legend of Madame Koi Koi with it. And honestly, I think that's a pretty neat little story. I mean, that just sounds like cheesy horror film, like cheesy 90s slasher, kind of like I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I kind of want something in that level of cheese, like, to run with this story, because I think it's a neat little thing. So our next entry is Melody is Dead, and everything I could find when searching for it related to music. And rumors that a singer from Spain named Melody died because she took a few years off on a music career to focus on herself. I don't know what this one is. If anyone knows what the legend of Melody is Dead is, could you let me know? I think everyone knows what a sewer gator is. I mean, people get a pet alligator, they get too big or they're tired of taking care of them, so they flush them down the toilet and into the sewer, because once you flush it down the toilet, it's not your problem anymore. This is also a very Florida thing to do. The Vanishing Hitchhiker is a classic ghost story with many variations that often go as a driver picks up a hitchhiker and they have a wonderful time. Then, without explanation, the hitchhiker will just disappear, often from the moving vehicle. There are a few variations, such as the driver gives the hitchhiker something like a scarf or a jacket that's later found at a local grave. Sometimes in that version, the driver will meet a local family and warn that the hitchhiker is their dead relative. There's also a reverse version where the driver is the ghost, and the Hawaiians have their own version where the hitchhiker isn't a ghost but their god Pele, looking to see if people are kind and giving. So, if you're in Hawaii, pick up hitchhikers. Don't actually do that. Walking Sam the Hat Man is a legend from the Lakota people on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. And while his name is harmless and kind of fun, he's not that. Walking Sam is said to be a 7-foot-tall entity that roams the woods of the reservation, preying on teens, and will mentally torment them until they take their own lives. Now, Walking Sam is said to be a stick Indian, which is a creature in Native American legend that has varying depictions. According to tribes from the Pacific Northwest, they describe stick Indians as being similar to Bigfoot, just a bit more sentient, like actually having clothes and like their own villages. Some tribes will describe them as dwarf-like creatures, and then obviously the Lakota tribe describes them something more in line with what we would know as a shadow person. Also, I know stick Indian is an offensive term, and it is the English term for these creatures, but that's because I couldn't find the actual term for them, because tribes do believe in these things and think that if you use their word for it, it will invite the creature to basically come into your life and attack you or do whatever it is they're going to do to you. So if you ask me, using the term stick Indian is completely okay because it keeps the shadow people away from me. Now, the Wendigo is a legend of Native American and first Canadian folklore originating from the Great Lakes region. Now, the native legends say a Wendigo are made by gluttony and greed and are often depicted as starving supernatural beings that will kill and eat in this way. And depending on the video you ask, someone can even be cursed into becoming a Wendigo by their greed or even literal cannibalism. The only ways to break the curse is, death, and depending on who you ask, there's different ways to kill them, but they all agree that it is difficult. Most of the legends agree that you also have to destroy the heart. Some say it's made of ice, so it's easy. Others say it's difficult because of thick skin, and the Wendigo knows it's their weakness, so they very closely guard it. And some legends even say that the Wendigo will regenerate, so you can destroy the heart all you want, but if you don't destroy the body, as in like rip it up and burn it, it's still going to come back. So if you run into a Wendigo, make sure you burn it. And I know the deer-headed furry monster is the most popular depiction of the Wendigo because, I mean, it's cool looking. I like it too. It's badass. It's scary. But that's actually if you didn't know, that's actually a newer depiction of the creature. It originates from a movie called Wendigo that came out in the early 2000s. If you want to see like a more accurate depiction of what they are supposed to look like, at least according to like native legend, look at the game Until Dawn. That's what like the picture you're gonna see. That's what the Wendigo from that looks like. That game was also my first interaction with Wendigo. It was the first time I ever heard of them, and I just remember the mountain man going, "There's Wendigo in them hills." I just sat there for a second. I was like, "What the fuck is a Wendigo?" And went on like a 3-hour dive into like what these things are, and I think they're really neat. The Hodag is a weird-looking reptile creature from Rhinelander, Wisconsin, and it first started popping up in the late 1800s. It's described as a bullhorn carnivore born from the ashes of cremated ox and is all around an angry little creature. There's not a whole lot to say about this one other than it appears in some Paul Bunyan stories, and the town of Rhinelander has really taken pride in this legend, so much so that the hodag is the town and local high school's mascots. It's used in several businesses, and the county festival is named after it. So, hodag. So Friday the 13th is considered the most unlucky day possible for various reasons, and we all just kind of accept that that's a thing. Some people attribute it to the general fear and distrust of the number 13, which dates back to the year 1307 when Templar Knights were ordered to be arrested on October 13th of that year, which also happened to be a Friday. At least that was the oldest story I could find that relates back to like the fear of the number 13. Others do relate the fear of 13 to tarot cards and it just being an unlucky number. A more modern example of why people distrust it is the Apollo 13 mission, which was known to have a lot of issues. I mean, the crew all went adrift into space. And now many buildings are built without the 13th floor. You know, you have people won't do 13 of anything. They don't like having 13 of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just an unlucky day. It's a day where black cats are going to run by. You're more likely to walk under an elevator or get hit by a semi. It's Friday the 13th. Just carry salt with you. I don't know what you're supposed to do. Furokuchi Onna is a Japanese legend that tells about the spirit of a woman with a mouth on the back of her head who is brought on as a curse to greedy men and women. Now, some versions of the story say that she will come to eat all the food of greedy people. Like, basically, yeah, there's one story of a miser who marries a woman because she doesn't eat, only to find out that she is a Furokuchi Onna and is eating all his rice with the mouth on the back of her head. I should probably mention he left a woman for this girl because he liked that she didn't. Other stories say that the mouth is brought on by a curse where the mouth will form on the back of your head if you're greedy with your food and don't share it properly. This is kind of a neat story and I like how it's food related. And Ed, why are you acting like this? I'm sorry, my cat has the one brain cell right now. Okay, so this next one, before I get into it, I should probably mention that one. Everything I found on it, it's a 2chan legend. There's a lot of 2chan legends in this one. And 2, it's a potential info hazard. So if you know about it, then it's more likely to happen to you. So if you're afraid of things like that, just go ahead and skip this one. Jump to this time slot, or there'll be like a thing in the plot for you to skip to. With that being said, the Girl from the Gap is a Japanese urban legend of the spirit of a woman who will come to you in, well, hiding gaps. By gaps, I mean spaces between the door and the frame, gaps in couch cushions, drawers. If you can think of a gap, she can hide in it. And if seen, she'll ask you to play hide and seek. And you're probably going to play with or without your consent. And by probably, I mean you're going to play with or without your consent. If you seek her again, you lose, and she'll drag you into the gap where only God knows what will happen to you. And the only ways to win are cover every gap in your life or die. There's no winning story. Like I said, I could not find a concrete, origin point for this story, but it was super popular on 2chan. So that's why I say this is a 2chan story, because that's like a lot of the studying I did on this story linked it back to 2chan. So that's my guess of its origin point. The Nopperable is a Japanese ghost with no face, and unlike most of these Japanese ghosts that I've talked about, this one doesn't kill you, they're just assholes. These spirits take on the form of everyday humans, typically ones that you may know. And what they'll do, they're going to draw you in, only to show you their blank face to do, an ancient form of jump scare. And the worst part is, they're known to work in teams. So, you'll have one that will, tell you, hey, man, come over here real quick. Hey, come check this out. And then, they'll lead you to, a bathroom or, around a corner or something. And then their buddy is just standing there with no face, gotcha. And it's just, this is just the most dickhead ghost I've ever heard of. And that's really it to them. They do this just to mess with people. And I know what you're thinking. oh, this is an old legend that's not happening anymore because people have evolved and like we're smarter than that. But no, at least the last reported sighting of a Nopera bow that I was able to find was in Hawaii in 1959. And I'm sure there's been more reports since then. But no, these dickhead ghosts are still out just kind of scaring people with a lack of face. The legend of infected needles hidden in gas pumps is a form of the HIV attack legend. This one tells that if people will intentionally leave needles that are full of HIV-infected blood on gas pump handles in an effort to spread the disease to unsuspecting people. This isn't true. People aren't doing this, and we're never doing this. This is also like an older panic from the late 90s, early 2000s, so don't stress it. Plus, I'm pretty sure it originated in Florida, or at least there were a few sheriff offices in Florida that like put out disclaimers like, hey, this isn't a thing. So, don't believe it, because you can't trust anything that comes out of Florida. The elevator game is a ritual creepypasta where it said if you enter a certain combination of buttons while on an elevator, you'll enter another dimension. That combination goes as follows. So you walk in on the first floor. You press the fourth floor button. Do not proceed if someone enters the elevator or one of the players leave the elevator. If someone does that, start from the beginning. That's just kind of, that whole if someone enters or leaves, that's just kind of a thing throughout. So I'm just going to skip reading that for every step. All right, after the fourth floor, press the second floor. Then press the sixth floor. Then go back to the second floor. Press the 10th floor. Press the 5th floor. Again, do not proceed if someone enters the elevator or one of the players leave the elevator. If someone does that, start from the beginning. Now, if a woman enters the elevator at the 5th floor, do not look at her, do not speak to her, do not speak and do not talk to her. That woman is not a human. If you do, she will decide to keep you for her own. Once she gets on the elevator, press the first floor. The elevator will either ascend or descend. If the elevator reaches the first floor, leave and do not look back. If the elevator reaches the 10th floor, leave and do not respond to the woman if she asks, where are you going or what's wrong. Her voice will be high when she asks that. And that's it, you're in another dimension. Weird stuff's supposed to happen in that dimension. You go back and you redo the steps to return to our dimension. This was also one of those weird stories that, like, I remember, I thought this was, like, nonsense for the longest time, and then I think it was Dylan and I will brought it up that people, like, were said this also. For the longest time, people thought Lisa Lamb did this, and that, like, they associated her death to, she played the elevator game and it worked, and that's just fucked up. Like, no, this isn't a real thing, and she didn't do that. So, like, I thank God people stopped saying that. I apologize for my Spanish in advance, but La Llorona is a Mexican legend often told to children to make them behave and stay away from water. The story is that she's the ghost of a woman who long ago found out her husband was cheating on her, and in her grief and not wanting to lose her children, drowned them and herself in the local river. She now wanders the river at night wailing for lost children and looking for them. What happens when and if she catches you varies based on who you ask. And I really do mean that. I have quite a few friends who grew up hearing this story, and I try to reach out to all of them and ask, like, what happens if La Llorona gets you? Some said that she'll drown you in the river like she did her kids. Others say she kidnaps and tortures you. One said that she will just, like, outright kill you with a knife. And funnily enough, most of them don't know or couldn't remember what she'll do to you, which leads me to believe that parents were just telling their kids this without, like, saying, like, this is what's going to happen if she gets you. But I kind of like the she'll drown you in the river. I feel like it fits with her character a bit. Tomino's Hell is a Japanese poem that's believed to be cursed. Now, while the poem is regularly available online and you can read it for yourself, it's believed that if you read this poem aloud, bad things will happen to you. Now, this story was also really popular on 2chan, and there were even people who post themselves reading the poem. Supposedly, it's also kind of been a thing kids in Japan will do since the 80s, and while I'm not a super big believer in curses and demons and ghosts, more of I don't know if they're real or not, but I'm also not about to take any chances, so I'm not going to read it. You can read it for yourself, or don't. I do not recommend you do it, and I do not encourage you to do it. Just know that if you do so, it's not my fault. I didn't tell you to do it. Don't sue me. So a lot of what I got when I looked up phantom vehicles was insurance companies and roadblocks, which I don't think it's either of those, but then I found it may be related to cars that are either themselves ghosts or they just drive themselves, and that's really it. But let me read some of the examples of these that I found. Some include those, the phantom vehicles that I mentioned on Clinton Road in New Jersey in a previous tier. In Australia, there's the story of the ghost truck of Canova, where a driver was driven through by a mysterious 1940-style big rig truck that was painted green. In 2000, an eyewitness claimed that an old truck started up by itself and blinked at him as he walked past an old house. How a truck blinks, I don't know. Along the E8 Expressway, also known as the Kuala Lumpur Expressway in Malaysia, various supernatural phenomena have been reported, including headless ghosts, phantom hitchhikers, vampires, and a yellow Volkswagen that will follow you and disappear and reappear along the road and will sometimes cause an accident. This is actually kind of weird, to be honest. I mean, you can look on YouTube and find those like cheesy, scary top 10 clickbait videos and find evidence of this, but also all the videos that I saw from those compilations, weirdly, like all of them were either in China, Russia, or second and third world countries. So yeah, take it that what you will. Next is the Roswell incident, and if you don't know what that is, where have you been for the last 80 years? To put it very simply, a UFO crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in July of 1947. To make it a bit more complicated, the UFO was recovered by the U.S. government, who said it was an aircraft, and then backtracked their word and said it was a weather balloon, but no one believes that it was a weather balloon. The most common conspiracy is that they recovered an alien ship along with at least 2 aliens that died on impact, and it was all taken to Alien 51, where the aliens were dissected. Supposedly there is footage of that. The one you find online is a amateur recreation student film project, but there is supposed real footage of this dissection. And the ships were reverse engineered and applied to military technology. And this isn't completely unsubstantiated, as locals at the time claimed to have seen both the UFO and bodies. But some have also said that they didn't see them. They did see something crash though. A lot of people in the area will say they've seen something crash. Some will just flat out say yeah, I saw it was a ship and there were dead people. And there were also several soldiers who claimed to have been stationed at Roswell at the time, stating they saw it all firsthand, they saw everything. And this is something that you can go on for hours about and dig into all the FBI military documents and just kind of all of the evidence. And this is one of those big alien conspiracy things. And we don't have time for all that. Just know that Roswell has, just like Reinerland with their weird little reptile dog thing, Roswell has really embraced this alien conspiracy in their town. If you go there now, it's a lot of alien themed stuff. They even have a museum. Don't go to that museum. It's $20 a person and not worth it. It's very, very not good looking. The Ningen is a Japanese creature said to be whale-like and living in the Antarctic Ocean that originates from 2chan. With the original post saying claims were from whalers that saw this thing in the Antarctic, believing it was a submarine, and when they investigated, they found nothing. And a lot of reports of it are just icebergs. This one's not that interesting. Bloody Bones is a boogeyman-like legend from the South that I honestly have never heard of, and I'm from the South. So there's actually 2 parts of this legend, Rawhead and Bloody Bones, where Rawhead is, the head and Bloody Bones is his body, and they work together to get misbehaving children. Most of their stories come with a moral. I found one about how they take a girl's head because she gossips. Some versions say that hugging Molly or La Llorona, they prowl the street at night to take children. And like I said, they're a boogeyman team. So think of what the boogeyman does for you, and you can just put them in their place. One thing I did see that was pretty neat though, basically Bloody Bone and Rawhead legends can be linked back to stories that slaves would tell that they brought with them from Africa. So if you dig far enough, I'm sure there is a legend that you can find in Africa related to this creature. So I'm technically chalking this up as the second story we have from Africa. Upper Snake is a short story that I can read for you real quick. There was a couple from Florida who owned a python. It was a very large snake, and they've had it for a while, so they did not put it in a cage, and they let it be free in the house. The couple started to become concerned when the snake stopped eating. All the snake would do is lay around, and occasionally it would slither onto their bed and stretch out its body. They finally decided to take the snake to a veterinarian because it wouldn't eat anything, even its favorite meals. The doctor did a thorough exam and turned to the couple and said, "You need to get rid of this snake immediately. It has been refusing its food because it's getting ready to eat you. When it stretches out, he's measuring how tall you are and if you can fit in his body." All I have to say is, of course it's in Florida. Tourist Guy is an online hoax photo of a man standing on top of the World Trade Center just as the first plane is about to crash into it on 9/11. Shortly after the attack, the image started to make its rounds online, with the story being that it came from a camera that was recovered from the debris of the World Trade Center, and a mystery began. Primarily, is the photo real, and if so, who is the guy in the photo? Right out the gate, it's not real. There's a huge list of reasons why. The first hint being, you wouldn't just stand there and take a picture knowing a plane is about to crash into the building you're standing on. Along with the type of plane doesn't match the ones that crash into the towers, the flight angle, the side of the tower the plane is coming from, the guy's clothes don't match what the temperature for the day was. It's a very long list of people have thoroughly debunked this picture. And secondly, the guy in the photo, this Hungarian guy who I'm not going to give his name because he doesn't want to be known. He took the unedited photo while on vacation in 1997 and admitted to adding the plane in Photoshop to kind of mess with his friends, not expecting it to become this huge thing. He admitted to it, said yeah, no, this was me. This was just supposed to be a joke. Didn't think it would become this big a deal. Crabzilla is exactly what it sounds like. A giant crab that was reported by the Daily Mail in 2014. I mean, just look at this clearly fake picture. I mean, it's got the red circle, and I love how we just slapped Zilla to the end of any word to emphasize that it is a giant. Happy Happy is a very long and very boring creepypasta about a lost Nick Jr. show of the same name that was kind of evil. The show was about, Happy Happy helping kids in various ways until it turned evil, and Happy would hurt others to help the kids. And 9/11 gets involved at some point. It's a whole thing. People thought it was real for some reason, but it's not, and the creepypasta isn't very good. I would not recommend digging into this one. Just save yourself the trouble. The next entry talks about those weird monoliths that just kind of popped up in Utah, California, and Romania back in 2020 that no one really understood. If you don't remember, these strange 10-foot tall metal monoliths just popped up in the wild one day and then disappeared. Because of the weirdness that was 2020, people started running with wild rumors about them. Others said they were homages to the show Westworld. Some said it was a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Eventually, art institutions said that they put them out there because they're artists and artists got art. A self-proclaimed wizard claimed she used magic to put them in the middle of nowhere. And in all reality, I don't think anyone actually knows why they were put where they were, except for the California one. I think some dudes actually showed the video of them making the one in California and setting it up. So that one's been answered. And in all reality, they probably are some kind of weird art project, but I don't think there's any concrete answer to them just yet. Closing off Tier 3, we have A Day with SpongeBob SquarePants. It's a lost media urban legend that is quite a bit of a rabbit hole. To put simply, the movie is a mockumentary about how SpongeBob lives in our world, and because the studio is afraid he's losing popularity, they hold a contest, so basically the winner will get to spend a day with them, and some weirdness will happen. The entry itself is it's a massive rabbit hole due to the lost media community's hunt. I mean, there's a shell company involved, I think money laundering at some point, and honestly, it's one of those things I can't do full justice for right now because it is such a big rabbit hole and there's a lot to go over with it. So I would honestly just recommend watching Blame It on Jorge's video going over it after you finish this one, though, because we're only halfway through what this video is going to be talking about. So starting Tier 4, we have the 999 phone charging myth. This legend is pretty simple. Back in the day, people used to claim that if you dialed 999 on your phone, it would charge it. This obviously isn't true, but why would people believe this, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you did. Apparently, old BlackBerry phones, I don't know how many of you remember when BlackBerry was a thing, but they were phones at some point. They would lock up features if your battery got too low, so all you could do was call emergency services and contacts. But dialing 999 and then hanging up would override the lockdown, so people would just kind of evolved that into, oh, if you dial it, it'll charge your phone. Blackberries and like actual like keyboard phones started falling out of style, and smartphones took over, and things like Siri started being introduced to these phones. People thought that you could tell her to charge your phone, but no, you can't. Hey Siri, charge my phone to 100%. Yeah, see, I just tried. She said she can't do it. So there you go. Siri won't charge your phone to 100%. The Black Volga is a legend from Eastern Europe, specifically Soviet bloc countries, in which it was a fear to see a Black Volga, a type of car that was often used by the Soviet government, and Volgas were just probably the most common vehicle in the Soviet Union. But if you saw it, it was bad news. This specific Volga would come out at night, and depending on who you asked, it was driven by either the Soviet secret police, the mafia, Satanists, or even Satan himself. And if spotted, the occupants will pursue you and either just kill you, take your blood for rituals done in either the West or Middle East, organ theft, you name it, they did it. Hello, Mishka. I'm trying to do something. Which, I mean, I get why this was a fear because, the Soviet government did just kind of yoke people up in the middle of the night for various reasons. And like I said, the Volga was a mass-produced car in Russia, or well, I should say the Soviet Union at the time, and it was used by the government. So I get why this rumor was there. I get why this fear was there. And obviously, people just kind of ran with other versions of the story as time went on. The chupacabra is the Mexican Bigfoot, which makes no sense because it was first sighted in Puerto Rico. It was originally reported in the mid-90s. I don't think most people know that. Like, the first sighting of the chupacabra was in 95. It's a small creature that sucks the blood out of goats, according to several farmers in Puerto Rico. The funny thing is, though, that no one can actually agree what this thing looks like. Some say it looks like some form of scraggly, hairless dog, coyote type creature. And other descriptions is it's a reptile-type creature with horns. And over the years, there have been supposed sightings along the U.S.-Mexican border, as well as Puerto Rico, and even some news reports saying that it was caught and killed, but all the alleged chupacabras that were caught were just dogs and or coyotes that had mange. So no one really knows what these are. I think the official reports is at least the initial sighting where they were just mange-ridden dogs. However, I don't think the actual blood sucking that happened to these goats was ever explained because that was a real thing that happened. The Hook is a classic ghost story that's, it's an old campfire story similar to a lot of the few ones I've read. This one's a bit longer, so I'll just give a quick summary of it. A couple is driving out to Lover's Lane. They hear on the radio that a man with hook for a hand has escaped from the local mental institution. They paid no mind. They hear something out in the woods. The guy goes and investigates. The girl, he doesn't come back, but the girl hears like a loud noise. She gets scared, drives off. When she gets to safety, she gets out of the car and realizes that there is a hook for a hand dangling on like the car door or somewhere on the car, and the guy got by the hook-handed Batman. And that's the story. The Lit Can is another short campfire story that I can quickly read for you. A very young girl is home alone for the first time with only her dog for company. Listening to the news, she hears of a killer on the loose in her neighborhood. Terrified, she locks all the doors and windows, but forgets about the basement window and is left unlocked. She goes to bed, taking her dog to her room with her and letting it sleep under her bed. She wakes in the night to hear a dripping sound coming from the bathroom. The dripping noise frightens her, but she is too scared to get out of bed and find out what it is. To reassure herself, she reaches a hand toward the floor for the dog and is rewarded by a reassuring lick on her hand. The next morning, she wakes. She goes to the bathroom for a drink of water, only to find her dead, mutilated dog hanging in the shower with his blood slowly dripping onto the tiles. On the shower wall, written in the dog's blood, are the words, "Humans can lick too." And that's just a fun little story that we used to tell each other to scare each other. Avril Lavigne replacement theory is probably one of my favorite theories on this thing, and it's very similar to the Paul is dead theory that I mentioned back in, I think it was like tier 1. If you don't know who Avril Lavigne is, she's a musician that was incredibly popular during like the whole mainstreamification first wave of pop punk emo from the early 2000s. She was for a while there, she was actually known as the Queen of Pop Punk. She was I'm talking like massive artist. I'm talking like on MTV and TRL, which were really big things in the 2000s. And today she does something, I don't know what. She's not that popular anymore. But the theory goes that shortly after the release of one of her albums, and during the height of her popularity, she took her own life due to just the pressure of fame and depression from her personal life. And much like with Paul McCartney, the record label didn't want to lose their cash cow, so they hired a lookalike to take her place so they could keep making money. And despite this sounding like it would start at the time that she was popular, apparently this theory didn't start, or at least wasn't well known, until the early 2010s. And again, they're saying that all this happened back in 2002, but the legend didn't start until 10 years later. And the evidence for this is weird. Apparently the key evidence is that Avril Lavigne will have moles appearing and disappearing, and fashion changes. I'm pretty sure there's makeup you can use to cover up moles, and people change their style over time. They change how they dress, they change what they like. Other big evidence is her writing changing, which people's penmanship can look different based on how fast they're writing. And none of the evidence for this makes any sense, and that's why I love it, because it's so ridiculous, so unnecessary, but just so great. Oblivious is a timeless classic legend about an old arcade game that I'm sure we all know, so I'll be short about it. It was an addictive arcade game that was in Portland in the 80s. Men in Black collected data on it, and then the cabinet disappeared. No one knows if it was real or not. It became real popular on the internet. It's one of the first internet urban legends. Chain letters were a nuisance on the internet for the longest time, and if you don't know what they are, you're probably too young to be watching this. If you don't know and you still haven't left, hey, welcome. They were emails you get sent, usually saying something like, since you started reading this, it's too late to back out now, you must finish it, and if you don't subscribe and forward this video to 10 people, Bunny McNutquack will steal your shoelaces, kick your dog, and put your hand in a warm glass of water before doing your mom. If they didn't say that, it was something like, the Dalai Lama says it's the year of Moonfry, and the mitochondria is in the house of Quasar. So make a wish and forward this to 5 people or have 8 years of bad luck. Oftentimes you would get these from your grandma who doesn't really understand the internet, or a little cousin that believed in monsters. And over the years, these evolved from chain emails to chain Facebook posts. The ignore for Satan, share for Jesus stuff like your mom probably puts on Facebook, which in turn has evolved into a meme. So share this video or Bunny McNutquack will get you. The Jersey Devil is the only reason you need to never go to New Jersey, and the legend goes back in the 1700s, a woman named Mother Leeds was pregnant with her 13th child that she cursed to be a devil. And immediately after the child was born, it went from a cute little baby into a monster with a goat head, bat wings. It had hooves, and it flew off in the night, and now resides somewhere in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Been an ungodly amount of sightings and different legends over the years. And everyone from the local drunk to Napoleon's brother has stated they've encountered this weird creature. And the state's kind of embraced the legend, so much so that their hockey team is named after it, and there's a lot of memorabilia in the area. Pretty sure there's a few movies, and just like any other cryptid, people will go out and try to hunt this. The green-clawed beast is an obscure cryptid that supposedly lives in the Ohio River. Now, there's no known description of the creature, except it has claws, and the only reported sighting is on August 14, 1956, when a woman named Naomi Johnson claimed to have been pulled into the river by a creature while tubing on the river. She was saved by her friend, and a while later, a military officer told her to never speak of the incident, and the creature has never been seen after this. And that's the entirety of the story of it, or at least the only story I could find of a green-clawed beast. Now, if you ask me, Naomi was kind of full of shit and made this whole thing up just for attention. This is I don't know, there's not a whole lot about this. The spikeful mermaid of Pyramid Lake is what it sounds like. If you don't know, Pyramid Lake is a pool near Reno, Nevada, and supposedly cursed by a mermaid. Now, the legend goes that she fell in love with a native man who lived in the region, and when his tribe rejected her and his marriage to her, she cursed the lake and land, and that's what caused settlers to come in and the tribe to basically, I don't know if they were disbanded or relocated. It's basically what caused the natives to lose the land to the settlers. That's like their excuse for it. I guess you could say excuse. The 2012 phenomenon was a wild incident. If you didn't know, people thought the world was going to end on December 21st, 2012, because that's when the Mayan calendar ended. And it's not like the Mayans said the world was going to end. They didn't predict it was going to like collapse in on itself. Their calendar was a wheel and they just kind of ran out of space. Yeah, when I say this was a big deal, I mean, it was like a really big deal. I mean, 2012 hype was real. As soon as the clock struck midnight on, for New Year's, going from 2011 to 2012, immediately the History Channel started playing their Mayan prophecy world-ending documentaries. And they didn't stop that shit until December 22nd. And I mean, they did a movie based off the hype. Name one other world-ending prophecy that got its own movie the year the prophecy was supposed to happen. Like, that's what you call phenomenon hype. It was like Y2K. It's like, no one knew exactly what was going to happen, but we were all scared the world would end, but with less of a reason, because there was no solid evidence to believe it. Now, some people became doomsday preppers. Others just kind of ignored it. Oh, I'm sure a lot of people went to church and started praying. I had a final that day, so I went to school. Are you glad you did turn on the lights? It's a short campfire story that, again, I can read this one. Two dormmates in college were in the same science class. The teacher had just reminded them about the midterm the next day when one dormmate, let's call her Julie, got asked to this big bash by the hottest guy in school. The other dormmate, Meg, had pretty much no interest in going, and being the diligent student, she took notes on what the midterm was about. After the entire period of flirting with her date, Julie was totally unprepared for her test, while Meg was completely prepared for a major study date with her books. At the end of the day, Julie spent hours getting ready for the party while Meg just continued studying. Julie tried to get Meg to go, but she was insistent that she would study and pass the test. The girls were rather close, and Julie didn't like leaving Meg alone to be bored while she was out having a blast. Julie finally gave up, using the excuse that she would cram in homeroom the next day. Julie went to the party and had the time of her life with her date. She headed back to the dorm around 2 a.m. and decided not to wake Meg. She went to bed nervous about the midterm and decided she would wake up early to ask Meg for help. She woke up and went to wake Meg. Meg was lying on her stomach, apparently sound asleep. Julie rolled Meg over to reveal Meg's terrified face. Julie, concerned, turned on the desk lamp. Meg's study stuff was still open and had blood all over it. Meg had been slaughtered. Julie, in horror, fell to the floor and looked up to see, written on the wall in Meg's blood, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" And that's it. It's a classic little ghost story that people used to tell. It's fun. It's simple. It's been turned into a few little shorts. The Hanging Munchkin is a legend related to the Wizard of Oz. I didn't know the production of that movie was hell on earth. The woman who played the Wicked Witch got burned. Judy Garland became a drug addict because the studio put her on a diet of cigarettes and barbiturates. The Tin Man got permanent scarring from his costume and makeup. I'm pretty sure he also got lead poisoning. The Cowardly Lion couldn't eat while in costume and almost died from heat exhaustion due to the lights on set. I think the Scarecrow costume had asbestos in it. It was either him or the lion, probably both. And with all that being said, it would be no surprise that there was a rumor that you could see a member of the Lollipop Guild hanging while the gang is skipping away after recruiting Scarecrow. And by hanging, I mean took their own life and in the background. Or at least that's the legend supported by a YouTube video showing the Hanging Munchkin that a lot of people believed. And, the question is, well, why did no one ever notice this? And the excuse is MGM went and covered the Munchkin with a flamingo and later releases the movie. Supposedly that was the thing. It was they knew about it and they just covered it up. So no one knew. Everyone was misremembering. It's kind of you don't fully remember what the original Star Wars trilogy looked like as you keep seeing the re-releases. You don't see the original cut. This was very easily debunked. From what I could see online, this legend originated from the original video being posted on YouTube. But I also remember my dad telling me this story in 2004. So I think this is one of those old legends from the 80s that got forgotten and then reintroduced to society with the advent of the internet, or at least the internet brought it, just brought it to a whole new generation of people who debunked it. The Howling Village, or the Inunaki Village, is a Japanese legend about a village that was believed to isolate themselves in northern Japan and refuses to acknowledge the Japanese constitution. Supposedly they seceded in the 70s, and there's a sign outside the village that says the Japanese constitution is not in effect past year. And people have several legends about this place, including they'll murder you, they'll eat you, curse you. They're like the Hills Have Eyes people, what have you like that. And this is just like a neat little story that's, a fun little game to play and, something to go exploring for, if you're willing to take the risk. The Grudge, yes, the movie, does have an 8th century legend that it's heavily based on and some believe to be real. If you've never seen The Grudge, I'll briefly explain the legend. There's a house in Japan that's said to be cursed by the family that was murdered in it due to their rage when killed. And, the rage of the father when he killed the family. And now, anyone who enters the home is said to be hunted down by the ghost of the family, specifically the mother Kayako and her son Toshi. And yeah, some people think this house is really cursed and the legend is real, which, Sarah Michelle Gellar went in the house like 20 years ago, and she seems to be doing pretty alright, so I don't know about all that. But it is a creepy story, and the original Grudge is definitely one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Don't watch the 2021 though, it's not very good. Gore Orphanage is a legend from Vermilion, Ohio, and that the legend goes that on a plot of land in the woods there was once a plantation house that eventually got turned into the Light of Hope Orphanage. That orphanage would burn down in the early 1900s, so now people say the area where the orphanage was is haunted by the kids that died, and it's a spot teens in the area dare each other to go to, and that's really about it. Also, there was a movie based on it that came out a few years ago, so that's pretty neat. The Fresno Nightcrawler is a newer cryptid first sighted in, Fresno, California back in 2014. The Nightcrawler are these weird walking white creatures that no one really understood. There's 2 known confirmed sightings. Like I said, one was in Fresno and then there was another in Yosemite, and people can't explain them. There was a TV show on Sci-Fi that tried to replicate the original sightings, at least in the original footage that is shown, but couldn't, mostly because of their walking pattern and such short height. They're only like a meter tall. Here's what that footage looked like. So obviously there have been a few fakes. People just used white pants to, do the, puppeteering them basically. But the difficulty with the replicating it was where the footage was shot. You can see the first one, but it's literally in an open field and no one really understands it. But yeah, they're just a cute little cryptid and kind of neat looking. I don't know, I think they're cool. The hanging tree is one I wasn't super certain on, as it's a very vague name, and 2, hanging someone from a tree was a super common form of execution back in the States. So just about every state has a legend related to a hanging tree. Most of the ones that I read followed the path of this area around this tree is haunted due to the large number of men that were hung from the tree, or this tree is haunted because an innocent man was killed on the tree. So there you go. That's the hanging tree. Agamemnon Counterpart is a creepypasta related to the iconic video that basically explains why it's cursed. The video was popular, at least came out in the mid-2010s, and went viral due to its strange nature, mostly the opening text, which should just tell you right now that it's a shitpost. While seen as disturbing when it was first released, hence the creepypasta, I think the feeling about it has shifted to the video being seen as a real good absurdism shitpost that was just ahead of its time. And to close off tier 4, we have the entry that made me want to cover this whole shebang. The Texas butthole tickling bit. The Texas butthole tickling bit. Yes. The Texas butthole. I can't say it with a straight face. The Texas butthole tickling bandit. Yes, that is a real legend. It was a fake news story published by several local radio stations in Texas back in 2015, claiming a man in the Dallas area was arrested for breaking into homes and tickling men's buttholes while they slept. And the only surviving report I could find goes as follows. With the name like Texas butthole tickling bandit, I have a child, I swear. I'm an adult, I promise I'm in my 20s. It doesn't take any imagination to know what he does after breaking in. Fortunately, he's been apprehended by police. Identified and caught by police in the early hours of January 5th, he managed to elude capture for 3 weeks. It's given male residents in the area a real tough time with his spate of assaults, which totaled a dozen homes by the time he was stopped. Police originally thought their suspect was homeless. However, when they picked their man up, he was actually wearing $4,500 worth of Jesus clothing. Why this story was made, I don't know, but it's hilarious. And as you can see, I'm having a very hard time saying Texas hooked Clean Bandit with a straight face. And the best part is there's a whole Snopes article explaining why it's a fake story when the name alone should tell you that it's not a real thing. And it's so goofy, and it's so funny, and I'm glad people were able to have some fun with this. And with that, we are done with today's video. If you liked it, I appreciate it. I thank you for watching. Like if you want, subscribe if you're new. The next, I'm gonna take a break, not do part 4 of this right out the gate. What I'm gonna do is I want to remake the Amboy video and then the Q&A thing. So keep putting down your questions for the Q&A. There's a community post, or I'll put a pinned comment here so you guys can collect them there. And then yeah, so it's probably gonna be the Q&A and then redo the Amboy video and then do part 4 of this. Again, I really appreciate anyone that's there, makes it to the end and watches my content. Obviously this is just a fun little hobby for me, so anyone that sits there and listens to me ramble, it's greatly appreciated, and I would love to hear feedback. Tell me what you guys think. If you have any other weird things that you want me to talk about, I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to take any and all, advice, recommendations. At the very least, I'll look into it to see if it's something I want to talk about. With that being said, have a good day. I love you, and bye-bye.